Welcome to another exciting episode of Shoot and Stiff Wrestling Podcast. I'm your co-host, Chameleon Venice, the international superstar. I'm a professional wrestler from Atlanta, Georgia, and my co-host,
C-Dub from the woods with a can of raisins in his hand. Oh yeah, I'm here tonight. We got a special guest. They have a connection. I'm sure we'll hit on that later. We got Lennox up in the building.
Lennox Leone, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, thanks for having me, y'all.
So talking about Lennox Leone, we were rivals in Ohio in Extreme Valley Wrestling. And also we were tag team partners in Wisconsin, and we used to go by the Ancestors.
What was y'all's attire like? Was y'all matching color schemes or anything?
I don't think we did we?
No, I think it was you were wearing black tights and I was wearing a black singlet. And I remember somebody, yeah, I remember someone from the crowd was calling me Indian Undertaker wannabe.
Yeah, I thought that was goofy. I'm like, what?
No. So my brother, Lennox Leone right now. So I had an opportunity to do a podcast last night with Jerry Bishop from Alaska. So we talked a little bit about you, and I told him we were doing another podcast with Lennox. So tell me, man, you are more than 20 years a veteran in this business. And I know we did a podcast back in 2019 or 2020 that was different. And it's been like 2 years. And so tell me, take me through your journey. When did you start it? And before all that, what made you to make that decision that you wanted to be a professional wrestler?
Oh boy. I actually wanted to be one my whole life. But after I lost my mom, I kind of soured on doing that, and I was just gonna be a fan and watch the shows, and just be a fan. But I got to college and I went with my dad to a show in Tunica, Mississippi. It was at a casino, and I think Lawler and Christopher were the main event against Mabel and somebody else. But by intermission, I was asking some of the people who I thought were promoters or having something to do with running the show or even being on the show. I was asking them, how do I get in it? And next thing I know, I'm researching wrestling schools in the library in college, and I ended up selling on Columbus, Ohio, because it was affordable and it was a free tryout. So I got with that, and I was training for most of the year, but I started doing shows 2 months after.
And what year was this?
Started. That was actually in the summer 1998.
Right.
So you started when WWF was around, WCW was around, ECW was around, when wrestling was hot.
Yeah, right in the last 2 years of actually it was like the first year or two of the Attitude Era. Yeah.
Yeah. Love to miss the Attitude Era. Man. Man. Yeah, that was a hot time. I was in middle school back then, probably. I think I was in middle school. Wearing a NWO shirt or DX shirt, one or the other, if not both.
Or an Austin 316 shirt.
Yeah.
So C-Dub, come on. Bring it on, brother.
Yeah, so you said you started in 98, in Ohio. How was the scene in Ohio back then?
Actually, it was pretty hot, actually. Up in or down in Ohio, it was actually pretty hot. Some of the guys that I was training with, they were still pretty good, and they helped me along. Two people who helped me along particularly were they were actually called the Casanova Clique at the time. Chip Allgood, who later became a Cliffhanger before he quit the wrestling business, and another guy, James Costa, who was Dale Johnson. And they were the first to take me on a lot of other shows outside of Columbus and going into West Virginia, where I actually worked for the Batten twins. And how that happened, what happened was when I went to the show with them, they actually had me pay. It was a $5 admission. They had me pay the $5. And my payday was them refunding me my $5 after I participated in the Battle Royal. That
Wow.
was
Damn.
my payday.
So you have any more stories like that? Starting off, where'd you go from there?
Well, from there, before I proceed with that, I actually in early '99 is when I actually became Al B. Dam, and that actually got me over quite a bit in the last 6 years after I named myself Al B. Dam, and it actually I was going to Northern Ohio, like places like Cleveland, which were and Elyria, Ohio was where I met Chris Hero, and he was just as well. And we were both green as goose shit, but that I only saw him that one time, and I only saw him again a few years later. But in the meantime, I was wrestling in once again in the Cleveland area. Ended up going to Erie and Pittsburgh, wrestling there, and then going and working. I actually got to try out with Harley Race at his world.
WOW?
Yeah, I went there with a couple of guys. One of whom was actually in HWA for a brief time before WWE pulled their developmental from him. And that was when I first encountered doing the Hindu squats.
I was training with Harley Race. How was that?
It was actually pretty grueling. You had to be in shape. You had to be in shape, and there was a lot of guys that were huffing and puffing. But the tryout was small too. A couple guys didn't show up. One of whom was BJ Whitmer, and at that time I hadn't even heard of him. But they was like, yeah, BJ didn't show up, and I was like, oh well, let's get on with it. Now I didn't know who he was, but a year later he started gaining traction in Ring of Honor and stuff, and I got to meet him. Real cool guy as well. But yeah, the training was brutal. It was similar to Japanese. It was actually, as I later found out, when I actually went to Japan, it's actually a lighter style. It's actually the light version of how they train you in Japan.
Yeah, Harley Race WOW was affiliated with the Pro Wrestling Nova for, I believe, quite some times.
Yes.
For a couple of years, I believe. Talking about the Japanese training is very intense, and I got a chance to do a training with New Japan Pro Wrestling's Katsuyori Shibata-san. So me from Georgia, I believe it was Trevor and some other guys. We were around 50 to 60 guys. We were training. We were just doing Hindu squats, 500 squats. There was this big guy. I don't remember his name. From New York. It was like a big dude. And we were squatting. Around 200, he quit. He went straight to the bathroom. We all can hear that tiger's crawling sound. He'd be throwing up. And the whole training was for 7-8 hours. And after that squats, we couldn't do shit because he was a chain smoker. Even somebody told him before we started, hey, don't smoke. This is Japanese style training. It's going to be bad. And he was like, oh, you shit. I've been doing this for 10, 15 years. Yeah. So trust me, I know. You finish 500 squats, then you get in the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do the squats first.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, listen.
Ah,
Yeah, it don't matter how long you've been in the business, you have to. There's always something new, and if you haven't been somewhere before, it's still good to learn that what they're doing too. And because that was a whole different environment from America, so
Yeah.
they sell different. Their psychology is different, and if you're that's why a lot of people I tell whenever I can I tell people that uh, you're always going to learn as long as you're in wrestling. It's similar to life. There's always something new. There's always new environments. There's always something around the corner that's going to be new, like new trends, everything. Like when I started, I never imagined having a cell phone, but here we are in 2022. Having cell phones and all this technology, the podcast, like I can actually make a podcast if I want to now. I couldn't have imagined doing that even 10 years ago.
I know, right? How long it took it for you to go to Japan? How long you were doing the indies in the United States before you went to Japan?
But it took me a long time. Like I went to OVW before I went to Japan. I was closer to WWE before I even went to Japan. I went 9 years ago, almost around this time, which I found it was actually kind of wrong time to go because it was a slower season after Christmas and during January. Like that's a slower season. It's better to go either in the fall or to go like in the winter, in the late winter, like February and March, were the best places to go over there if you wanted to work on a regular basis.
And so IWA Ohio, I've done a podcast about the whole promotion. It was one of the oldest wrestling promotion in the state of Ohio. I believe Will Miller started around the late 70s, I believe. So what was your experience working in there? Like, I mean, back then, WCW was not even on like television, I believe, in the late 70s. They had their own reputation. They had television show, local TV show or something, I believe. And how was it to be a part of a promotion like that? What was your experience?
Well, as a greenhorn, it was just being in the ring. I was, even though the ring, like the place we were at, when I would people who told me they watched the program thought it was in someone's basement, but it was actually just an old dingy gym that was upstairs on West Fifth Avenue. And just being in the wrestling business, just being in the ring was like, my eyes already, I was bright eyed and bushy tailed, and just being in the ring was exciting. So to go, just being in that environment alone was actually, it was just being in the ring was cool. Like I was able to do the stuff that I actually imagined a few months ago when I was researching wrestling schools. I actually had a dream that I was actually in a match, and I didn't know how it was supposed to go, but um, a few months later, in my first match, it went exactly as I dreamed in when I was dreaming about it a few months prior.
When you started, what was the training like? Cedar, my partner right here, he's training in Deep South Wrestling, owned by legend Nick Patrick. So, what was the training like when you started? And C Dub, I think you can relate it. This in what is the training right now? It's like, can you guys talk about that?
Well, the way mine went it was almost like what Cornette said, like a fast food wrestling school. They first thing they taught you was how to fall, how to bump and stuff, and then you would learn the moves. I never really learned when and where to do the moves. It was almost kind of natural to kind of I had to kind of feel my way out of it, and then there was a couple people who helped me with the execution of moves, but it was only the two people I mentioned before. One of whom was Chip Allgood, who later became a Cliffhanger. He was the one who uh, gave me some little modicum of psychology. He was the one that that kind of got me into thinking of how, where, and when to do certain moves.
Yeah, it's about the same. Always learn how to bump first, because that's like the most important thing. Because that's what you're gonna be doing the most of. Tucking that chin. Uh, yeah, no, and every ring is different. Like there's not. It's almost like a snowflake. Like not all rings are the same. You like bump on one ring and feel a certain way. You bump in a different ring, it's a totally different story. So it's getting that initial first bump out the way just to get a feel of how it's going to be. I've learned that's pretty important because like go ahead and get that out the way so you know surprises later.
Did you ever try the
Yeah.
WCW power plant?
I wish I would have, even though it would have been grueling, but I kind of wish I would have done that. But I didn't know anybody in Atlanta, and I was as a 21-year-old, I was already scared shitless of going to Columbus because I got a bunch of cousins down there, but I did not, they weren't. I was still gonna be far away from home, and I actually do have cousins in Atlanta, as I found out later, but I didn't know it at the time, so I was kind of, it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'd be ready to do the power plant. But I was seriously considering doing that, though. I was, considering going down to Atlanta from Arkansas, where I grew up, and I was thinking about going down there and trying my luck.
How long you were working in the Indies before you went to OVW, and how you were like, traveling in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and all those areas, right? Before you went to OVW.
Yeah, actually, I went mostly to. I didn't hit Michigan until after, but I mostly went to West Virginia, and I went to and I would go mostly to Ohio and Pennsylvania. Even went up to New York and tried out for Lucha Extreme Wrestling, which was going to be that was actually going to be almost like an offshoot of XPW, but apparently they didn't get that off the ground, or I don't know what happened with that promotion really. But the next day after that tryout match there, I went to WXW Office Promotion, and I worked JT Smooth and Samu in a tag match, and that
Nice.
was pretty cool. That was one of the coolest experiences of my life. I got to meet Alpha, and just like I find out with a lot more Islanders, they're some of the coolest people you can ever meet.
This was in Pennsylvania, right before they moved to Florida,
Yeah, when they were in Allentown.
Allentown, Pennsylvania. Um, so, what was your experience like in OVW? I'm sure there are a lot of guys that you trained and work with right now that work in WWE, right?
Oh yeah.
So, what was your experience like working with those guys that you see it on TV? Uh, can you recall any memories of the guys that works at the WWE or any other companies out there?
Well, that was when I first met Serena Deeb. I think she was already there at least a few months before me when I got there. I actually got there in '05. I did a tryout seminar in April of '05, and I moved out there 4 months later. So it was about 7 years after I first started wrestling, and I actually had quit for most of that year. I went back down to Arkansas in '04 and was going to try to work for Memphis Wrestling, but um, nothing happened with that. So I just didn't wrestle for about a year. So I went to Ohio Valley, and I wrestled a lot of the guys that were there before they were to be called up. And some of those people were training with us with our reps class, like Mike Mondo and Chad Wicks. He was with us. He was one half of the Dix tag team. I'm surprised they even was able to say
Red Dupree was there or no?
yeah, he was in developmental.
Oh,
He had
yeah,
already
yeah, yeah.
but he was coming back down periodically. He had already been called up for about a year and a half before, but he still would come down. In fact, I saw him when he came back down in '06, right before he began working for ECW.
C-Dub.
Yeah. During that time of Ohio Valley wrestling, like yeah, you name a couple of guys. Any of them you have matches that are available or that are floating around out there that you would like to let us know about? Um, like I know. Let's see. We did a podcast with the Macho Man, and he actually trained went there as well, and he had actually got to wrestle Venetia's buddy Phil Brooks in a match while he was there. Anybody like that? You been able to wrestle anybody like that while you was there?
Actually, I mostly got to do that in the house shows, and I don't think those are. They might be available. If they are, I haven't seen them. There's one match. My first match on OVW television was against the former Titan in TNA. They brought him in as Jacob Duncan, and that match might be floating around somewhere. It was back in I think July of '06, but I'm not sure if it's where it's at because I haven't seen that match since I did it.
So
But it
you
was
got a chance to do a lot of house shows for WWE?
no, for OVW. A lot of dark matches for OVW. I didn't do too many TV matches during
Wow.
development.
I did not know that. They used to run house shows in OVW. They were back then they were a big deal.
Yeah, they were. We were doing house shows like at least about 2 or 3 times a week besides television.
Wow. I know I saw a documentary and in some of the old videos of Canyon, Chris Canyon. He was one of the trainers in OVW. Did you got a chance to train under Chris Canyon?
No, he was gone by the time I got there. So it was probably back in 03, 04. I got there in '05, and by that time, um, they were he was already gone. He was either already released or he was on the main roster, being somewhat busy.
And any names, let's say Miz or anyone else like that you had matches with in OVW? Any experiences?
Whew, the Miz, oh boy. I worked him in a battle royal. I got to work like I was in the same ring with Punk and all them in the battle royal. We did a battle royal in what was called the Derby 5 Expo in Louisville on 7th Street. And we'd have monthly house shows there. And we did a battle royal, and I was doing the Native American gimmick, Lennox Lightfoot at the time. So, as you know how Native American wrestlers a stereotype where you have to do the chops. They expect chops and stuff. Yep. And I gave him a knife edge, and he turned his chest in. And it was like he didn't want to take the chop. And so right after he did that, I turned away from him and just started working with somebody else in the battle royal. He gave me an excuse in the dressing room afterwards, and I don't remember what the excuse was, but I just shook it off like, yeah, you're the Miz.
This very, very interesting. So I know you did Money in the Bank. I think 2010 or 11, right? Or
2017, actually.
2017. Did you ever got a chance to see him there at that time? Did he ever recognize you?
I don't think he did. I didn't ask him if he would have. I didn't care. I shook his hand. We stood there awkwardly. It was 3 of us and him and Maurice, and we kind of stood there awkwardly for about 2 seconds. And he was like, "Okay, I'll shake your hand." Telling all 3 of us, and I was like, "Yeah, all right." He does remember, and I didn't care if he remembered or not. That experience was. It was like, yeah. I like the Miz. Like I've hung out with the Miz. I've hung out with Mike, and he was cool except for that. I was like, all right, well, I don't know if I want to work this.
Got a chance to talk to him when I did that extra work, and he spoke to me highly about Micah Taylor. He said Micah Taylor helped him a lot, so he still. And I told Micah about it, and Micah was like, "I don't know what I did. We just wrestled." But yeah, he talks highly about Micah. All right, let's move on. But still, have some questions about OVW. So you are wrestling in OVW from 2005, right? 2005 to how long you were there?
I went there from '05. I left in '09.
So you were there for 4 years, and I'm sure you witnessed a lot of WWE guys coming and go, and Impact Wrestling guys coming and go. Is there any time period, did you ever got an opportunity to go to WWE, or anyone approached you and said, "Hey, kid, we're going to give you a developmental contract," or anything like that?
At one point, I thought I was going to be back in when I was starting to do TV matches with OVW back in '06 and even in '07, but no, that never happened. I thought I was going to be in line to it happening, but no, I didn't even get extra work until I got out of there.
When the
But
transition changed, I don't know if C Dub knows this. So WWE used to send their guys to OVW to their developmental, right? And then they changed. They went to FCW, I believe, in Florida. Right before they started the thing in Florida, they did something with Deep South Wrestling. They did some developmental deal with Deep South, right?
yep, it was almost around the same time. Almost same time as I first got to OVW, and the Georgia program didn't seem to work as well. So by '07, they kind of they parted ways with Deep South, and they started bringing the Deep South guys up to
FCW.
Louisville. I'm probably being biased saying this, but their developmental is even better than this one currently than what they have now. The way they train was just it was old school, and it actually is safer. You don't have to do as much, and it taught people how to work different styles within your environment with different opponents, different spots on the card. You literally learn everything about the wrestling business in Louisville. And like I said, I might be biased, but I think OVW was the best developmental program WWE had. I think it's better
I've
than
seen I've seen
what
a
they have.
post out there where they were saying they pretty much teach you everything to the point to where I think it was Rick Rogers said that Brock Lesnar would drive the truck that carried the ring. They were doing everything.
Yep. You did the ring. Everyone did the ring. It don't matter if you were developmental or not. We all did the ring. Everyone did the ring, and they replicated that the first couple years in Florida. But once again, it's still they call OVW even now to this day the Harvard of professional wrestling, and that's the reason why you learn everything about wrestling, everything about the business. You'll learn more in 1 year. You'll learn more in 1 year in OVW than you learn at any other time in the business.
Back then.
Especially then.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about right now, brother. I mean, I'm just speaking from my experience. I remember, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I'll tell you this. I was there in 2019, right? I think 2019 or 2018. I don't remember. Before AEW was doing AEW Dark, the squash matches, OVW was doing it, pre-shows. I was living in Indiana at that time. I think you remember, we were still communicating at the time. I used to drive every week to Louisville, be on the show. They put me on a pre-show, whatever it was, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute squash matches, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I was not fucking getting anything. I was not learning anything. And I remember Al was asking me, "Hey, do you want to learn how to produce these things?" And I was like, "I don't have much money, man." I literally told him, "I don't have much money, And I think it was kind of like, they started doing certification, like professional wrestling certification or something like that at the time. And at that time, I was using entrance music. and it was a Tamil traditional kind of like interest music. A music director composed the music for a movie called Kabali. It's a Tamil movie from Malaysia. So I spoke to the guy. He gave me the copyright permission and everything, and I was using it. And long story short, I left OVW, and one of my buddies sent me a message and saying that, hey man, OVW is using your entrance music for Mahabali Shira. Shira is another wrestler, wrestled for I think Impact Wrestling or something, and I went and I saw them using my fucking entrance music on this guy. And they didn't even have the balls, courtesy, nothing to reach out to me, ask me anything. I was like, well, it is what it is. I haven't said this on public platform till now, but and again, my experience in there, um, on and off, I did learn a little bit how to work on the camera here and there, but apart from that, it's the system is very different. Majority of the wrestlers at that time when I was there, they were like so entitled. They're like, "Oh, I'm here. I made it in OVW." Even when I started going there, I had that OVW had, like you said, the hardware of pro wrestling. It was the university. It was like the glory days, right? The Batistas, Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold, and Chris Benoit. Those guys used to go there and help these guys, Doug and Danny Bashams and everybody. That what made me to go there. But anyway, just wanted to share that here. So 2009, what made you leave from OVW?
Well, honestly, I actually kind of had to. I didn't renew my license, and truthfully, I wrestled a couple of shows without them, which that was a mistake. Shouldn't have done that, and I got suspended. And from Kentucky, I couldn't wrestle in Kentucky, so actually, I took a year off from wrestling then too, and only wrestled a few shows here and there.
We're talking
And
about
after,
license, and again, this is to those so many people out there. They're not going to give you any license card. They're not going to give you any certificate. It's just a fucking stupid shit. You just once you do a physical, you send that information, and they give you a what is it, 8 or 10 digit number?
yeah, but I think it's a 10-digit number. You used to get a card, but now, yeah, I guess you don't anymore.
So make me understand this. So when you wrestle in Kentucky, now I've done it, but I don't know. I never wrestled out of expired license. But how defines this out? Like did they check the record? Like the validity, or how does that work?
Yeah, they usually do before the shows. If you've renewed it for the year, they'll check it. 'Cause they usually I notice now a lot, but yeah, they check your license if you are currently licensed every especially every December and January. They're gonna try to keep up a lot more because of what happened with me, where sometimes they would slip up and don't, especially the promotion itself. I've been booked with them already, so they would assume that I'd have mine ready, but I think now even back then they were still kind of trying to they were still trying to remind people, hey, get your license renewed. Let's hurry up and get it renewed so we don't get in trouble.
Yeah,
Because
back then there was nothing there. Like nobody's just watching or monitoring except you. I mean, it's just really hard to think about or remember any of these things. So 2009, you left OVW. So C-Dub, what do you have? There's a lot of encyclopedia knowledge right here. C-Dub,
Yeah,
pick the brain.
A lot of guys in the industry, or that I've seen when I was looking into it myself about the whole being licensed and this and that. Some guys saying even if you're a manager, if you are to get touched in any type of way physical during the match, you also have to have a license in some states. A lot of people are saying that it's just a money grab, just for something, just to have their hands on it. A lot of states don't even have licenses and stuff. Do you see that? Is there any pros to having a license, or cons? Like, is guys who usually have license more professional, or less or is it just like a lot of people are saying, just a money grab type thing?
Partially, that's actually ultimately that it is a money grab actually. But in Kentucky particularly, it was necessary because of
Gaming
IWA.
commission or something?
IWA Mid South kind of whew, the way I guess Ian was doing some stuff. It was there was stories of him flipping off the commissioner, and they would instruct him to not bleed. That's on certain matches or certain nights, and they would do it anyway, or they would. There was a lot of stories about that, about Ian just kind of
IWO
like
Mid South was in Indiana, right? Or not in Kentucky?
they did shows in Kentucky. It was mostly based out of Indiana, but they would do shows in Kentucky, and uh, especially if you were working in OVW, you were advised strictly to never work IWA Mid South. This,
Don't
I think,
bleed. Yeah, there's no bloods are allowed. I remember that.
yeah, and I think because there's certain cons to it to me in that regard as far as blading, um, because it was being abused apparently by IWA Mid South, so they just outlawed blood in the matches. If you bleed even hard way, the match needed to be ended within 30 seconds, if not immediately. I was first told 30 seconds and then later told immediately the match would have to be stopped. You'd have to go home. But because of apparently what happened with IWA Mid South years ago, there was stories of Ian flipping off the commissioners when he get in the ring, and he'd do stuff against their instructions or wishes, and they banned him from Kentucky, and they tightened the reins on the requirements as far as like I said, no blood, you bleed, you got to end the match, and stuff like that. The cons was that they tighten the reins sometimes when it didn't need to be tightened. There was one time I actually flunked a drug test I took. I only had marijuana, and I remember my face when I saw the violation being written up. I couldn't believe it because of at that time there were a lot of people that were abusing steroids in OVW at the time. Even after the wellness policy was put into place, the first couple of years of the wellness policy was one hell of an adjustment period for some of the guys in OVW, because a lot of those guys were they were doing cycles and stuff. And I actually personally didn't have much against that either. I almost did it, but I ended up gaining muscle without it. So I didn't want to be 5'10" and 260 pounds. So I figured 225 legit was cool with me. But I thought marijuana wasn't as much the real culprit as it was like prescription pills that guys were abusing, or steroids that some guys did abuse. Most of the guys actually knew how to do the cycle and wean themselves off properly. So there wasn't much in the way of any roid rage that you would even see, that you definitely wouldn't see in the dressing room. And I can't speak on what they did at home. I had a roommate who did roids, and he was actually all right. He wasn't. Um, he didn't. He didn't rage out on anybody that I knew of, and he was actually pretty calm. Besides, if he worried too much, but that not outside the normal. Freaking out of certain things that are beyond your control. Um, he knew how to do it properly. He knew how to take his cycles properly. He knew how to get off when he needed to get off. He watched himself too, and even advised me to do the same. And they
So
knew how to do it and not abuse it.
when did you got a chance to go to Japan, and what was the process?
I actually I was sworn to secrecy as to how I got there at first, but I figured I let the cat out of the bag. Um, the first year after I left OVW, I went back from late 2010 to March 2012. After I left, I was on the indie circuit. I was still in the show quite a bit, and I met up with I got to reconnect with Madman Pondo.
Yeah.
He was with Sarah Logan at the time while she was Crazy Mary Dobson, and I was actually helping her. Uh, I was giving her pointers, helping train her and stuff with Pondo. So one night, he actually got me in touch with the owner of Pro Wrestling Zero One at the time, who was I think it was Yoshiyuki Nakamura,
Mm.
and he had me send some pics and videos of my work, and I did that, and that was in the spring of 2013, and I was gonna we were talking of having me going over there in the fall, but I ended up going like the day after Christmas and stayed there until mid-January. Pondo didn't want me to mention that, but he actually got me in connection with him, in contact with the Japanese promoter, with Nakamura, and that's how I got to go to Zero One. People have wondered, how the heck did you get to go without there was another guy named, I think his name was the Sheik, who was supposed to be like the guy that was supposed to be sending guys there, but it ended up just I was able to get in because Pondo helped me get in touch with the promoter.
C-Dub.
Nice. Like yeah, while you was over there in Japan, like what type? I'm curious. What type of style, wrestling wise, do you perform in the ring? What would you say? Is there someone that you can compare it to like give our listeners an idea of your ring style, and how were you able to adapt? Did you have to make any changes while you were over there?
Yes, I had to make actually I had to make quite a few changes. My first match there, I didn't really get to work it out with the guys much, so I was just the style I was used to here in America, and then trained by Rip. I actually had to get myself out of it a little bit. I had to kind of vary myself a little bit, not just like be too old school, because being having too much, just because I needed more moves, and I didn't have enough moves I could do in Japan that that I do now. If I went back now, I can it'll be quite a bit better. But I was trained. I was kind of maintaining that old school training I was getting, and you have to kind of uh, vary it up. I didn't have the wherewithal to try to vary up my stuff, and the selling is different. The way you sell has to be different too.
A lot of
And
screaming involved. Ah!
yeah, the way they do that to fight. It's like fighting through the pain.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
not just
It should look like a real fight, like combat fight.
yeah. It's like if you get in the face, you're like, you're trying to fight through it. You're trying to fight through it and try to give him the same thing back, trying to give him the receipt, so to speak. Or when you get chopped, they don't just go, oh, they go, oh, it's like they're trying to absorb it so then they can try to give it back to you. It wasn't just I had to sell different in Japan. I had to, kind of adjust the way I work differently, because they everything they do, literally everything they do revolves around fighting spirit, from the size of the competitors to how they work, how they sell. It's all about fighting spirit.
You got any plans of going back or trying to go back anytime soon?
Oh boy, I've been trying to go back for years. um, it's the management has changed in Zero One, so it's harder to go back there now than it was before. because of new management. And I actually applied for a tryout to NOAA, but I ain't hear back from them, unfortunately. So I'll have to probably make my name here in America again, and then hopefully, some Japanese promoter will see me and go, "Hey, we want you back Japan," or they might not know I was even there before, so I'll have to go. I'll have to remind them. But
Well,
before,
you mentioned about Pro Wrestling Noah. So, what do you think about, or what's your thoughts about Sheamus going one on one with Suzuki, and also Nakamura going one on one against the Great Muta?
I saw that the other day too. Yeah, I saw that, and it kind
The
of
Sheamus and Suzuki one is, I believe, is not real though. If you look
Oh,
at the bottom of the flyer, it said like never gonna happen or something like that.
oh,
It
I
said
don't know.
some, yeah, it looks so legit and real based on the other flyer. But like, if you look at the bottom, someone told me it said something like "haha, got you" type deal or
Oh,
whatever.
wow.
You
What about the
because
Nakamura versus
that
Great
one's
Muta?
real.
That one is
Yeah,
real.
that one. Yeah, that one's legit. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if the Sheamus one was. But they're saying um uh the other guy, he's not even associated with the promotion. So that's the other thing.
Suzuki, right? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Suzuki is with the New Japan.
yeah,
And earlier this year, I think Wrestle Kingdom they did it. New Japan did some shows with Pro Wrestling Noah, I believe. They did
yeah.
some business together, and I don't know what's happening in there. Apparently, they're doing New Japan have some sort of deal with All Elite Wrestling, and they've been exchanging talents back and forth. Few. Um,
Yeah.
so I know you've been in Japan, even that short period of time. Um, when you were there, did you got a chance to meet wrestlers from different countries, working in there, learning the style, learning the craft? How important the Japanese wrestling style was for those people?
It was actually pretty important to him. I met there was a couple of guys there. One of them was the champ at the time, James Radine. He was I think he's working Big Japan now. But I met him. He was I think he's from New Zealand.
Mm.
And boy, it was the way they say the C word is it was that was actually kind of interesting, because he would greet the way he would greet you, he would say that almost endearingly. If you know what the C word I'm talking about, that women hate the most.
The
Yeah, yeah,
cunt,
yeah.
the C word, yeah.
Yeah, they'd be like, what's going on?
You fucking cunt.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry. This is a Shooter Still Wrestling podcast, so you can say the problem. I mean, I know
So
you
from
cannot
if
at
you're
this
from New
moment.
Zealand, that's how they greet you. They call you a cunt.
yeah. They were like, he was like, what's going on, you cunts? And I was like, does he want to fight somebody? My fist was balling up and stuff. I was like, I was, man, my
Oh
fist
man.
was up at first, but then I saw how his energy was, where he was saying, I'm like, oh, he's just okay. I had to gain an understanding of it. I had to go, oh, okay, that's how they greet people. Okay, it was so it was more than an adjustment of just doing what was done in Japan, but dealing with certain people from other countries too.
See, Dub, we should go to New Zealand and start ECW all over again.
Yeah.
We can't air small matches in the States if that
Man,
happens.
So,
I'm down for it.
Oh,
I'll be down for that.
so brother, tell me. So, I'm sure you've been on the road, right? Do you have any like CW? Normally, ask this question, but so I'm sorry, CW. I'm
Yeah, that's
just
my
going to take it from.
go-to. He's taking a question out of my bag.
So when you wrestle, when you travel, and there's so many states and with a lot of different people, do you have any memories of traveling with any legends or anyone that you stuck in your head? Oh man, that was fun. I wish I could have done that every day. That was a very amazing, great, or there is any on the road experience where, oh man, that was one of the fucking worst experience I ever had, or you ever had, oh, that was the funniest experience you ever had? Road stories, anything you can think of from any states, good, bad, horrible.
I never really had a truly bad bad experience on the road with like as far as names, especially like Buff Bagwell. I actually wrestled him in 2016, but I actually traveled with him. He rode in the car with Damian Adams, who's training now and doing a little bit of wrestling in the Northeast, and Mason Rage. We were doing a show in Southern Kentucky somewhere, and Buff Bagwell was on the card, and we were charged with giving him a ride back to the Louisville airport. And he was actually we partied afterwards before we did this, so he was I think drunk and pilled out as well. And listening to him talk I was in the back seat, he was in the front, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. He had some advice that he was giving a little bit of advice as far as, in the business to us, but I didn't remember that as much as I remember just hearing the slurred speech and hearing how drunk and pilled out he was. I wasn't exactly straight edge either. I was drinking myself, but I had already kind of I wasn't drunk that night. I was, buzzed, but I didn't get plastered that night, especially. So I remembered it, and I remember hearing him, and I'm like, man, this guy is maybe he should just go ahead and fall asleep until we can, until he gets to the airport, and then we'll wake him up then. I was thinking I wasn't disappointed though, because I was used to how we do. I'd done the same. I was doing the same things, but I wasn't taking pills wholesale. I wasn't getting high on that stuff, but I did, drink quite a bit. So I wasn't never going to be judgmental of him. I wasn't going to be like, oh man, poor Buff, poor Marcus. I wasn't thinking in that regard, but it was interesting to me. Tracy Smothers, I got to travel with quite a bit, and that was one of the funnest experiences of my life. I got the main event from the Evansville Coliseum because of him when we were teaming together. I was supposed to be his quote unquote son. Lennox Norris Smothers was my name when we teamed together. And what a fountain of knowledge too. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
But what a fountain of knowledge.
It was I was so lucky to meet him right after I had a match with Gary Gandy in XPW. I don't know if you remember this. He was there, and he was signing autograph. It was during the time period where he had I think it was chemo. I think he was doing chemos at that time. And he called me, hey, kid, I watched your match. You're a great heel. I love everything what you did out there. Keep doing this. This is what he's lacked now these days. You have a great heat. Just keep pushing. Keep doing this stuff. I love it. And I almost cried because he took that time, and he spoke to me. And then later, I think it was the same year, me and Rene Dupree went to Evansville Coliseum. We worked that big show. He was there. That was the last time I saw him. Gave him a hug, and he said, "Good to see you again, kid." That was the last time I spoke to him. A lot of knowledge, God. Remember?
That time, speed up. That time, in I think it was near the Dayton area, wasn't
it? No, it was that was an Evansville Coliseum that I saw him last time. But before that, first time I met him, I was in XVW. That was I think Ohio. I believe it was Central Ohio or something.
No, it was
Middletown, Ohio. Yeah, that was Middletown, Ohio. C-Dub, do you remember him wrestling with the Bear?
I heard. I remember. I was not too long ago on a podcast with the Scott Armstrong. They mentioned a story about the whole wrestling the Bear, and they bringing the Bear in, and Tracy being the only one that would wrestle the Bear, and the trainer of the bear was like complaining about how it was supposed to look like the bear was killing. It was supposed to be afraid of the bear or whatever, but he was making the bear look like there was nothing to be afraid of or whatever. He was having a good time with the bear. I
The
remember.
match is still out there on YouTube.
Yeah.
God. So, out of all these years, brother, take me to an experience that you had where you felt like, fuck this, I'm done. I'm gonna walk away, or anything like that. I had so many, but did you ever had any experience like that?
There was actually in late 2008 in OVW. I was teamed with Ben Woods, who was the outlaw, and we were the war party.
Benjamin Woods,
Yeah,
the I think it was owner. I don't know if he's owner or booker of Elevation 9 Wrestling
I
in
think
Miss.
so.
Elevate
Yeah,
Pro.
Elevate. Yeah,
Yeah, we teamed together. We had a great run that year in '08, and I think around this time in '08, we did a dark match with Totally Awesome, who at the time was Paradise and Chris Silvio. They were Susio and Kamikaze Kid at the time, and we did a job to them. And I was kind of getting frustrated. I think a lot of us were after that. We had a WWE tryout the previous September, and a lot of us didn't, get the call. We didn't get, it was only 4 guys got hired out of the whole OVW roster of 30, and uh, we rode back with them too, and I was kind of frustrated on the way back because I was thinking to myself, well, damn, they just, we won tag team titles everywhere outside of OVW, but then there it was like they didn't really, they just passed us over, and some of it was political, like they liked me but didn't like Ben, and vice versa. Well, one particular booker didn't, who was Roadkill, he didn't like Ben. He had heat with him, but he liked me, and he kept trying to get me away from him. I'm like, oh, we're tag team partners. Like we're good together. We were a great team together. We had some great chemistry. We had to work on it a little bit, but when we got the chemistry together, we got it. It was, we did a lot together, and to try to split me apart from him at that time was, to me, a horrible idea. I was like, why couldn't they just have us, do some stuff in OVW, which they would have, and they were going to start to. But at that time, my frustration was at an all time high, and I actually quit for 6 weeks at that point. Like about this time in November to the middle of December, I stayed away from the Davis Arena for a bit. And the next week, we were going to actually wrestle the Highlanders, a former WWE team. I found that out. I found that out later that we were going to wrestle him from Ben, and I ended up. Usually, that could have been like, damn, that was a missed opportunity, but I didn't care at that point. I was starting to check out because I was like, well, they're just going to use me as, as this.
I, I had a bad experience. My experience was I forgot the name of the promotion. Otherwise, I would have just said it. One of the worst rings in the world. When I took the first bump, I was like, it took the life out of me. Playing woods, there was the thinnest mat ever on top of it, and I was a heel, of course, always. And this is Irvine, Kentucky, in the middle of nowhere. And after my match, I was putting all the bags and stuff in my car. 3 people approached me. Hey, you a foreigner? I mean, you protect your, gimmick, your character, right? I was like, yeah. Tobacco's is spitting, like, well, let me tell you something, boy. This is a green state, and we don't like foreign people here, and we don't want to see your face here again. Okay, we'll see you, we'll shoot and kill, we'll kill you. All right, get out of here. I was like, all right, no problem. I didn't say a word. I threw my bag in the car, boom, started for 3 hours. I was like, what the fuck was that? That was one of the worst experiences I ever had in Kentucky. I think I was At that time, I was living in Indiana. I believe I drove 4 or 5 hours, and the promoter told me he will pay me $50, and he ended up giving me $40. So now these days, there are guys and girls. They train. I don't want to name the schools, but they train in different schools. They come out of the school, less than a year experience. They ask for 50 to $100 in local promotions. What do you think about that?
Wow. It's one thing to know your worth, like, that it's one thing of that, but when you're just starting out, that's actually a horrible idea that actually can possibly, can get you blackballed if you do that with the wrong people. That can get you blackballed because with wrestling being such a political game anyway, you can price yourself out of the game in a lot of the cases, especially when you're starting out. You want to get as much experience as you can. Now, where I'm at this point, it's only good for me because I'm new to this area. But otherwise, if you're just starting out, it's actually good to try to get out as much as you can. And that's the problem I've had with when guys be beholden to certain promoters, and they're told not to go to other places, and go to other places, and when because they trained them, and that's a horrible idea. That's horrible. You're limiting the guy to going, just staying 20 minutes from his house or an hour, when he could be experiencing, he could get a lot more experience, going as many places as he could. It's more necessary when you're starting out.
See that?
Yeah. What are the chances of the rebirth of the tag team, the ancestors down the road? Can we get a reunion? Come on down to Georgia. Reform the even I believe Venetian is actually in a faction or like some type of alliance, worldwide elite or something, and Stranglehold promotion. He might could use a tag team partner.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I
Well,
wouldn't
he lives
mind.
in C-Dub. He lives in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Oh,
Yeah.
might have to dial Eric. Get Eric on the phone.
Yeah. Get Eric on the phone. Um, all these years, brother, it's been more than 22 years now?
Actually, almost a quarter century. It's actually been 24.
24 years. Yeah, I remember when we did that podcast back in 2020. It was almost at that time 20 years, I believe. So my question is, so you started back in 1998. Of course, you told us, you couldn't really go to Atlanta, Georgia. You didn't know anybody. You couldn't really do any training with WCW. What about ECW? Did you got a chance to do anything with ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, or no?
I had a tryout match with him. I actually had a tryout match there.
Oh,
The way they did it was you would help with the ring. You help set up and put down the ring. You were a ring crew.
like
And then,
NWA does it right now.
yeah. And then they have you go out there, and do a 5-minute trial match, which is most tryout matches is you get 5 minutes. Then you show them what you can do, which actually is just seeing how you move and sell. They don't really care if you can do any flip moves, even though one of the guys did kind of look and go, I did like Jeff Hardy's move, the whisper in the wind, except the guy was on the ground instead of standing up. And I missed the move and got pinned 1, 2, 3. And one of the guys like, man, how'd you do that move? That was pretty cool. But they mostly don't really care if you can do that or not. They want to just see how you move in the ring and if you can sell and if you can work, lock up, whatnot. They don't really there's only literally a few times they would care if you do any really athletic moves. But yeah, I
And
tried out for ECW. I tried out for him. It was in Ypsilanti, Michigan on October 26, 2000. I can't believe I remember that. But yes, yeah, it was on October 26, 2000 that it was in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
you did
Yeah, tell
try out with the WWE, right?
Actually, the tryout I did with WWE was in '08 with OVW. We all got the tryout with WWE in '08 because they had just parted ways with OVW, and they were doing us a solid that year too. They actually helped us out that year. They helped us out with the last Six Flags shows we did. They brought in Cena, Orton, and all those guys. They brought in Cena and Cade for the main event on one of the shows I was on, and it was kind of cool meeting Cena. I remember I was only 210 pounds. So we introduce each other and I shake his hand. And one of the first things I see is his big ass forearm. I'm like, man, those forearms are freaking huge. That was what I said in my mind exactly. But he was a very respectful, very cool dude.
C-Dub.
nice. Yeah, yeah, that's like one of the first things I always look at too, them damn forearms. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what does he do, man? That jump's crazy. It's about like they're like as big as a cat. My calves are pretty big, and this dude's walking around with damn huge ass forearms and shit. Um, what was I gonna say? The the shows in at Six Flags and stuff, they didn't charge you admission for the tickets or anything, and then give you your money back like the old promotion did they?
No, no, OVW guys could go in there. We were able to go in for free. We were even we had to pay for the rides, but we can go in for free. Well, we had to pay for
Okay.
tickets for the rides, but that was it.
Yeah, you don't see that too often nowadays, where like a promotion set up where a theme park is or close to it, where they work in a conglomerate type deal. It's as if the days of working with wrestling promotions like that is over with because like the main focus is like, especially when COVID hit and everything was forced to change up how they handle things. It's like it's slowly getting back to how things were, but it'd be nice to see some of these smaller promotions like uh get up the ladder, so to speak, and even have these bigger promotions maybe do more than what they think they're doing for the business. Uh, yeah, and put the like give it shed some light on it at a better format. Because I like Venetia said, with AEW and stuff, and even OVW, highlighting someone's talent in a squash match and not letting them show what they really can do is not doing nobody any good. It's not even making your existing talent look good in my eyes. I could see doing it with like almost or Braun versus 4 or 5 people. That's one thing. But when it's a one-on-one squash match and both people are like the same size, and if you know anything about the other talent that most people don't know about, that they can pretty much go in the ring, but they're not allowed to. It's like it's kind of pointless, so to speak. I mean, it's good for the person that's getting the opportunity, I guess. Down the road, the more they keep doing that, maybe it looks good for them. But for the business, for other people that are trying to get there, it's not doing them. It's kind of making you want to second guess what you're what you're trying to get into.
Yeah, it would. It was okay for us to do it in OVW when we because the guys that were not under contract, we can kind of get away with that. But the way it's they try to do it nowadays, it doesn't work as well. It's actually it has to be a certain situation and with certain people, and just doing it willy nilly doing a lot of things willy nilly in the wrestling business is a horrible idea.
I mean, I was watching some old school. Well, I wouldn't say old school, really, sir, but like 96, 97, Nitro, and Scott Norton's old tag team partner, Ice Train,
Ice Train,
was
yeah.
fighting Mean in a 1-on-1 match, and he was getting a chance to shine, do some moves. He wasn't. You would think he would get squashed, even though he's a big guy. You would think Mean would like just go in there and just put it. But that was actually giving him a chance to show his skills, for a big man. And they just don't do that type of thing now for whatever reason, like they used to.
What do you think it's because is all these things happening? You don't know the right person. Is that why? Because like C-Dub said, like, even back then, there was another guy. I think his name is Jerry Flynn or Jerry Lynn. It was a
Flynn.
uh, Flynn, right?
Yes.
The tall guy, the MMA background guy.
Yeah, if he was in WCW, that was Jerry Flynn. I remember.
Jerry Flynn, yes, Jerry Flynn. It was Jerry Flynn. So they gave him a lot of opportunities. He was on Saturday Nights, Thunder, Nitro. He was the guy actually Goldberg constantly beat him under 30 seconds, 1 minute. But eventually, because of his cells, they gave him more opportunity. He ended up working with Chris Canyon, DDP. He had some decent matches, even though he was getting squashed. But he had his spots. I remember the matches he had with Goldberg. He would give him that spin wheel kick and a couple of forearms and stuff. But why do you think this is happening right now? There's so on one side, there you are, more than 24 years of experience. And on the other side, someone barely have 6 months of experience on television, getting squashed or whatever the term it is. Bad, terrible, taking the worst bumps. Nothing looks good. And on the other side, you are well-traveled veteran here. Why we don't see you on major television, major companies?
Well,
What do you think?
that's a good question. And when you're in the position where I'm at, and you see those guys getting those opportunities like that, even though they might be getting squashed, or they are just they'll show a little bit at least and losing. You see that, and it kind of you're not careful, it can be very frustrating to watch. I've been able to kind of calm myself down on that one and go, well, I just keep plugging away as long as you want to do this. And if if it's getting too much for me, I'll just I walk away, no problem, no harm, no foul. But I think the reason would be it's I think it's partly some of it is political, some of it is timing. And I've had to try to stay on, had to stay on people. I don't know. I only knew a lot of these guys that I've mentioned in passing. Haven't exchanged phone numbers with a lot of these guys. I haven't actually, I didn't hang around them much. And I think if that were the case, it would probably, things would probably be different, because it's a political business. It's actually, quite political. It is more so if you know somebody, then you can get somewhere. And that's where some of those guys happen to be they've happened to luck out in that. They actually, like, I have a little cousin in the wrestling business now named Moses the Deliverer.
Oh,
And he recently on WWE television this past Friday. He's the people he's associating with in World League Wrestling in Missouri. Like one of the it was a girl actually who was also he's associating with Tootsie. I actually did an Evolve tryout, the same Evolve tryout with her. So
hmm.
actually if not for COVID, I actually possibly could have been wrestling for Evolve, and probably would have at least been working with WWE and doing something. But yeah, COVID just really, yeah. Oh boy.
It messed a lot of us up. C-Dub, anything else?
Nah, can't think of nothing. You took my bag, my one question from my little hip, my go to. Um, I got one here. Here you go. To anybody that's looking to get into the business or right now, what would you say probably is in your mind the number one thing they should focus on and gear all their attention to starting out?
Huh. That's a pretty good question in itself. I would First thing I think of is look at it, look at the approach, look at just think of an approach to it as far as uh approach it as a series of learning experiences, because you're gonna learn a lot in wrestling. I would focus on that, because that's where every little category that you can mention, as far as getting professional gear, or just getting to know yourself and your flaws, because you can use that to your advantage to form a wrestling persona or a personality. Especially as a heel, because that's where you use your flaws. Like part of my heel, part of me as a heel, I actually look at my own flaws. I'm kind of like my father. My father can be pretty when he was living, he could be condescending to certain people when they do certain things different from him. And I kind of had that in me as well. So I recognize that, and I use it in my heel gimmick whenever I do things as a heel. Trying to be morally superior and stuff like that. When actually I'm no more morally superior than anybody on this podcast or any room I've been in. But you come across that way to people. It don't matter how you really are. So yeah, I'd say get to know yourself and who you are, and use part of that as a persona to develop yourself. And also, like I said, use everything as a learning experience. No matter what opportunities you get, when you get up to WWE, you use it as another opportunity to learn. Anywhere you go, from the smallest independent to the biggest stages in wrestling, it's all a learning experience. That's what life is. Life is a learning experience, and you learn until you die. Until your last breath, you learn, because everything's changing. Nothing like I learned that the hard way in Japan. I tried to do the Rip Rogers style in Japan, and sometimes uh, just doing it to the letter doesn't work. You have to vary up some stuff, and you have
Yeah,
to
you got
adjust.
to adapt. I pretty much did the same thing in when I was in Wrestle One in Japan. There was like, no, we don't wrestle like that here. You don't do that kind of a funky Chuck Norris thing. That's what they told me, and I had to learn that. Then even when I went to Mexico, it's the same way. I tried the old school way. I tried it at the Japanese style here and there. No, Mexico have their own traditional way. And I wanted to ask you this. So there are Impact Wrestling, NWA, AEW, and then we have the big league WWE. Now, there's rumors out there. I don't know if it's rumors. I don't know if it's true. WWE pretty much publicly mentioned that their focus is on college athletes more now, and in AEW, I don't really see a lot of indie wrestlers getting an opportunity in there or getting a contract in there either. What is the future for professional wrestling and pro wrestlers? What do you think?
Well, I think the future is still there. I think yeah, they're focusing on college athletes and things of that nature, but they're still going to hire uh, a certain number of indie talent. They're still going to hire some of us to help those guys fresh out of college in the pros and other sports. Whether they hire a huge number of us beyond the usual limits, not sure. But they're going to hire. They're still going to hire a certain number of indie talents, and even beyond the requirements that they usually require, where there's age requirements or a certain build. They're still going to use some of us because of our experience level, especially if you've not just been working the certain circuits in one area of the United States. If you've been around at least a little bit, I think they're gonna give certain people a chance, certain indie guys a chance, because some of us we're the soil of the business, and because there's no territories no more, there's not 20 to 30 territories anymore. Some of us are necessary. There's still going to be a certain amount of us that they need to bring in either as active competitors or trainers, or even agents backstage. There's going to be a certain number of us they're going to use.
Well, what's your future plans? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years, I'm going to call one last spot. It'll be Duck 2, get out of business at that point. I've been considering this for a long time. I'm probably going to be training the next generation. I'm already giving a lot of them advice, and so that's probably going to be where I'm going to be more so headed towards. Is I'll probably be doing some training. That's actually part of my plan of getting in the big leagues. I wanted to get in as an active competitor for about maybe a year and a half, and then try to
start your own promotion in school.
Yeah, eventually. But while I'm in the promotion, probably be an assistant trainer in one of their facilities, and
Nice.
then launch that.
Just like the last question, what do you think about Jim Cornette? Do you listen to him?
I do quite a bit. I think he has some great points. I think the only problem is that the way he does it, when he insults people, it's when he yells, when he's, I think the tone is wrong, but he's got some great points. Yeah, and this is just from my training in OVW, him, Rip, and Danny, they did it that same way. As Cornette was he's the most famous one of them, and he actually, people will listen to him, and the only problem is when they listen to him, they'll take it the wrong way. Especially nowadays, in a culture like this now, we're more sensitive and not as
everything is offensive.
Yeah, and not as quick to take criticism like that. It can, you can rack some nerves doing that. But I was already conditioned to listen, no matter what they would say, just listen to what they're trying to tell you. Cornette is passionate about wrestling. He's been a lifelong fan. It's the only job he's really had. And anyone that he even perceives as shitting on wrestling, he has a hard on for. He wants to punch. He literally wants to punch people in the face when he feels like they're they don't even, like, a lot of these kids aren't even mean to do it. They don't know any better. That's how they were conditioned to do. But
he loves Kenny Omega.
Yeah, because he perceives Omega shitting on the business when you're doing certain things that he even perceives as shitting on the business that he has spent his life, loving,
Protecting it,
protecting, participating in, and he's so passionate about it. That's why I've tried to listen to him as he's saying all this stuff, and I've tried to understand people. Try to understand people, even if they're yelling at me. I've usually tried to understand people. and I've tried to analyze people. So that was my analysis of Cornette. He said it like, if you listen to what he said when he was talking about Owen's death, and he was talking about Russo. He said wrestling was the most important thing in his life. And I actually can relate to that. It's been one of the most important things in my entire life as well. It got me through my mom's death. It kept me from wanting to get into gangs as a black kid in Arkansas. And that's still kind of a thing in Little Rock. And I got out of college and I got to travel the world because of wrestling. I had to go on the underside of the world because of professional wrestling. I never thought would never thought of going to Japan, if I didn't get into wrestling. But it was such an important part of his life, just like it is in mine. He's very passionate about that. And if he feels like you shit on what he's passionate about, he wants to fight you. And he don't give a fuck if he gets beat up or not. And there's a lot of us that are capable of beating his ass, but he doesn't give a fuck. So fucking with someone like that has nothing to lose.
Yeah, I feel him sometimes, man. When I look at it, Harley Race, his contribution, Roddy Piper, Bret the Hitman Hart, Stan Hansen, Owen Hart, and all these guys, their contribution, everything is kind of like went to a waste. When I look at the modern day wrestling, especially in AEW, some of the stuff. I mean, well, when Bryan Danielson wrestles, yeah, he put up some great matches. When some other guys are like, they know their stuff, and Jonathan Gresham is also another guy who just put a clinic there. But then you have talents right there carrying this business, putting in great matches, great wrestling stories, and then you have the Pizza Man, the Pockets. just killing it. And I was very surprised why they never hired Joey Ryan in there. But anyway, brother, where in the world people can follow you and reach out to you on social media?
Well, that's an easy question. They can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Lennox Leone on Facebook. I'm Leone de Oro 1976 on Twitter. And for the promoters that are brave enough to book me and not scared that I'll hurt their guys, they can reach me. They can reach out to me at Commonorris@gmail.com. Commonorris is spelled COMANORRIS@gmail.com. All lower case letters. Just in case people get confused, it's all lowercase letters.
Promoters from all over the world, this is the man you need to book. A guy who have more than 24 years of experience for your promotion. He can do seminars, teach psychology, in-ring psychology, teach you how to work in front of the camera, off the camera, how to work with the crowd, how to perform this beautiful art of sport called professional wrestling. And thank you so much, brother, for doing this. Thank you so much for taking your time. This episode will be available. The video episode will be available on YouTube and the audio platforms. Audio will be available on the platforms such as Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podcast One, Anchor, Google Play Music, and Amazon Music. Thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for having me
Appreciate
on.
you.
C-Dub.
Thank you very much. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.